Good morning, and welcome to the second of two videos on human evolution. And in this video, we will actually concentrate on human evolution as it stands. So, um, one of the biggest objections that um, certain groups of folks have about human evolution is that they don't believe that um, humans descended from apes. Well, in reality, most evolutionary biologists would actually agree with that statement. We didn't descend from apes. We are apes, all right? We are part of the family of the great apes. Um, we also get into the whole argument about biblical beliefs and taking the Bible literally. Um, and I have only two things to say about that. First, if you read the first two chapters of Genesis, you'll notice that there are two completely different stories of creation there. All right, and if the Bible is fundamentally true, then uh, in the first two chapters of the Bible, one of those two chapters can't be true, and so that's what I have to say about that. Regardless, the other aspect of this is the whole idea of the rib from Adam becoming folks. I have cousins who are fundamentalist Christians, Baptists, I believe, who truly believe that males only have 11 ribs instead of 12 because God took a rib from man and made woman. All right. Um, I would love for them to get a chest X-ray for whatever reason, just to count the number of ribs, because sadly, I think their beliefs would be shaken to the core. But I digress. Now, here's uh, the family tree of the primates that are currently extant, meaning not extinct, on Earth. All right. And you can see on the right-hand side, this includes the lemurs, the tarsiers, new and old world monkeys, gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and hominids, which includes us. Now, all primates, starting way back here with the ancestral primate that you see at the beginning of the family tree, have a number of characteristics that are unique in the animal kingdom. First, we have opposable thumbs. All right, think about all the different ways that you can move your thumb around. All right, your dog can't do that. Your cat, a bear, most other organisms can't do that. Only the primates can do that because only primates have opposable thumbs. We have stereoscopic vision, meaning, that our eyes are positioned in the front of our skulls. All right. Other animals do have this, especially predatory animals, but most of the prey animals, deer, cows, things like that, their eyes are on the side of their head because they're looking for their predators all around them, whereas hunters are looking directly at their prey. We have well-developed brains. All primates do. We have a reduced number of offspring, usually only a single birth at a time, with a very increased period of parental care. Primate babies tend to stay with their mothers for a long period of time, as opposed to other organisms. All right, a baby deer is born, and an hour later, it's up and running. Okay, for humans, it's a year before our children can actually walk. We also have a culture. We have learned behaviors and social interactions that are not necessarily common in other organisms. Now, there are two subgroups here. The prosimians, which are the lemurs, the tarsiers, and the lorises. And you can see them down here on the bottom of the family tree. And you can see that they diverged in this area in here, here and here. Then we get to the anthropoids. That's the group number 2 here. And this includes the monkeys as well as the great apes. All right. And the great apes are considered to be the hominids, whoops, which are the animals that you see here. And yes, human beings are animals. All right, we are part of the great ape family. All right, we're not our own separate group. We are certainly not plants or fungi or anything else. Okay, now in this video, I want to concentrate mostly on the evolution of hominids. All right, these are the organisms that either are or directly led to the human species as exists today. And so the hominids are the human lineage on the evolutionary tree. The characteristics that separate us from the rest of the great apes are the fact that we are bipedal. All right, in other words, we stand straight up and down. All right, there are no other bipedal mammals anyway. All right, even the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the orangutans, they don't stand straight up and down. And they certainly don't walk that way. They may be able to stand that way for a little while, but when they move, they're knuckle walking. They're walking on the edge of their hands. We have a flatter face with a far more pronounced chin, and we have a much larger brain size than some of the others. Now, when did the human species begin to diverge from the other great apes? We believe that this happened somewhere around 7 million years ago. This is when the hominids split from the apes. And so when somebody says to you, "Oh, I don't believe that humans descended from chimpanzees or gorillas," you can say, "Yeah, neither do I." All right. What we believe is that we shared a common ancestor about 7 million years ago. And that's when the hominids split off from the rest of the great ape in the family tree. There are a couple of example fossils here. There's a fossil from Central Africa that was found that's about 7 million years old. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Sahelanthropus chidensis. An Eastern African fossil from about 6 million years ago, Auroran tugenensis. Yeah, okay, good luck with that. And one from about 5.5 million years ago, Ardipithecus cadababa. In any event, these are our first ancestors, if you will. These are the ones that are closest to the branching of that family tree. The group that really made huge strides in adaptations and evolutionary change were the Australopithecines. And there were several different species of Australopithecines. And this is a group of hominids that evolved and diversified in Africa about 3 million years ago. There were a variety of different species. Some were very small and thin. Others were much larger and more bulky. But they all had massive jaws, and they fed on plant material. However, the big characteristic that changed them was their ability to walk upright, which is very different from the chimps and the gorillas. The limb proportions were still fairly ape-like, very long arms and legs, and they had a fairly small brain. But it's believed that the bipedal posture allowed them to survive as the climate changed in Africa and the forests began to diminish and more grasslands became abundant. Animals that stood upright could see further across the plains to look for predators, to look for food, to look for places to hide. There's a famous skeleton called Lucy, which is an Australopithecine, and you may have read or heard about this one. She is a member of the species Australopithecus africanus, and she does have a fairly large brain based on her body size, and she's the most likely candidate for an early Homo species. All right, even though she's an Australopithecine, she is likely to be the ancestor of the Homo genus. Now, characteristics of our genus, the genus Homo, is that we have a brain size that is 600 cubic centimeters or greater. That's fairly large, all right? Although our current species, Homo sapiens, does not have the largest brain size. That actually belongs to the Neanderthals. Homo species also show evidence of tool use. All right, fossils were found with in the same area of tools, and their jaws and their teeth resemble humans. Now, this is a big difference from the great apes. The jaws are much smaller because we are now omnivorous organisms. We eat both plants and meat, and that's a big change because meat provides a lot more proteins and a lot of other nutrients that have allowed us to develop our brains. All right, it also gives us a lot more calories because using our massive brains requires a great deal more energy than other animals use. Early examples of Homo species include Homo habilis and Homo erectus. And later examples include the Neanderthals and our direct descendant or ancestors, the Cromagnons. The Cromagnons are the first group that is considered to be part of our species, Homo sapiens. So the one thing that I do want to make sure that you understand is that the human family tree is not just a branch. It's many branches, all right? And you can see that at certain points, like for example, look at this graph. This line here represents 2 million years ago. And notice there were multiple species of humans running around on the planet at that point. We had Australopithecines boisei, Australopithecus robustus, Homo habilis, Homo ergaster was a new species at that point. Homo erectus was about to arrive on the scene, and so on. So at different points in evolutionary history, there were multiple species of humans. Now that seems like a weird thing to many people, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? How many species of bear can you think of, right? Grizzly bears, black bears, Asian bears, polar bears, all right? How many species of canines, wolves, coyotes, foxes, and so on, all right? And so it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that at some point in our history, there were multiple species of humans running around on the planet, all right? How these species interacted is, of course, a mystery because we weren't there. We don't know for sure, but we can use evidence to, certain forms of evidence to kind of guess to the best of our ability as to how these species may have interacted. Now, Homo habilis lived about 2 million years ago. It is probably our direct ancestor. It had a very large brain with an enlarged area for speech. The temporal lobe on the sides of the brain were very large in this particular species. They were omnivorous. We can tell this from their dental patterns, their teeth. And they were found and most likely used very primitive tools, right? So, they picked up rocks and threw at their prey, or they smashed things, or they built spears to hunt their food. And they may have had a culture, all right? There is some evidence that Homo habilis is one of the first groups of humans that actually buried their own dead. Homo erectus lived from 1.9 to 0.3 million years ago. So 300,000 years ago. We're not talking that long, really, in terms of evolutionary history anyway. They had an even larger brain than Homo habilis, a very flat face with a projected nose. Right, this is the first group that had noses, not just the flattened nostrils of the great apes. They stood very tall and erect, and they had a striding gait, meaning that they didn't wobble as they walked. They walked much like we did, in a straight line without bouncing up and down too much. It is believed that Homo erectus may have been the first group that migrated out of Africa into Europe and Asia. And there's a great deal of evidence that they used tools and fire to cook their food. All right, which also increased the ability of us for us to get nutrients out of our food. We are also fairly certain that this is the first group that actually developed some sort of primitive language. They could communicate with each other using words, or at least sounds. Modern humans are called Homo sapiens. That's us. All right, this is our group. And there are two beliefs about how Homo sapiens spread around the world. The first is what we call the multi-regional continuity hypothesis, which suggests that modern humans may have evolved from Homo erectus in several areas, including Africa, Europe, and Asia. In other words, Homo erectus moved into those areas and then evolved into Homo sapiens in three separate locations. That's probably not a reasonable hypothesis because evolution doesn't generally work that way. You would expect to find three different species in Africa, Europe, and Asia. The out of Africa hypothesis, on the other hand, is much more accepted these days, and the idea here is that modern humans evolved from Homo erectus in Africa and then moved out of Africa in a mass migration, right? Maybe to look for better hunting grounds, or as the climate changed or something. All right, and this is the theory that is, or that currently has the most support. This graph illustrates what we're talking about here. In the first one, we have three different branches of the tree, and Homo ergaster migrated to Asia, to Africa, and to Europe, and evolved into Homo sapiens in each of those three places. Again, not a very likely scenario. On the other hand, in the out of Africa hypothesis, Homo ergaster may have certainly migrated out of Africa into Asia and Europe, but became extinct in all of those places. Only the ones that remained in Africa evolved into Homo sapiens, and they then migrated to Asia and Europe. All right. And again, the hypothesis shown on the right-hand side of the screen is definitely the one that has the most support these days from the physical evidence. Another group that we should mention, and by the way, this is by no means an exhaustive group, but many of you may have heard of the Neanderthals. They were first discovered or fossils of them were first discovered in Germany, and they are thought to have lived around 200,000 years ago. They were much more massive in terms of their structure. They had brow ridges, so big eyebrows. Nose and jaws and teeth protruded forward, so their faces weren't as flat as modern humans. And they had a low sloping forehead and no chin. This group is believed to have been able to interbreed with Homo sapiens, and we did live simultaneously. Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalis coexisted, and how they eventually, the Neanderthals eventually became extinct is still kind of a mystery. Were they outcompeted by Homo sapiens? Were they eliminated, hunted, for example? We don't really know, but scientists are still looking for and at that evidence and maybe someday we'll kind of figure it out. Okay. The earliest or the most recent of our ancestors are the Cromagnons, and these guys lived from about 40,000 to about 10,000 years ago. All right, the first 10,000 years of Cromagnons are simultaneous with the last 10,000 years of the Neanderthals. But 10,000 years ago is about when history is believed to have started to be recorded. These Cro-Magnons are the oldest fossils that we consider to be truly of our species, Homo sapiens. They had a very modern appearance, so they looked just like you and I. They had an advanced culture, including art. All right, the cave drawings that have been found in Europe were done by Cro-Magnon man. They had used tools for sure, and probably had a well-developed language. And it's also believed, based on their artwork and some physical evidence, other physical evidence, that they were cooperative hunters. So they would go out and they would take down a mammoth, or which is shown in the illustration here, and work together in order to do that. Okay, so this is a great video by a guy talking about human evolution. He's quite entertaining. I really enjoyed the video, and I hope that you will as well. So when this video concludes, please make sure that you go to the PowerPoint, click on this hyperlink, or just copy it into your browser and have a look. All right, it'll give you a little bit more background on human evolution. So that concludes the second of two videos on human evolution, and I hope you learned something.